Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, wherever you're watching this or listening to this from. This is Isaac, and I'm here with my friend Bruno in another episode of the Puzzle Podcast, where we discuss difficult questions in 10 plus some minutes, depending on the slack we give ourselves. Difficult questions that have to do with what we call the puzzle of product development, of organizations, of teams, attempting to do innovative things, novel things, innovative inventions, serendipity, all that. And today's question, because change management is a big part of getting teams to do things in a different way, is this change management thing still a thing, or is it an outdated way of looking at change? Bruno, to you.
Okay, starting the timer, and I
Mhm.
have a feeling I'm giggling at every episode and saying like, "Oh, this is a huge question," probably because it's true. So it is a topic that's very interesting to me. It's so interesting that I'm doing a doctorate in organizational change, so I have a thing or two to share about this. What I would like is a little bit wording in the beginning. Change management, I think, as we consider it, is very problematic. But change is eternal. To me, change processes are a very, very human thing. And what we have learned in the last few decades is that change management is perhaps not the best approach, or at least not how we used to do it in terms of having a very mechanistic approach: freeze, plan, unfreeze, or
Yeah.
then you have ADKAR, processes, all those frameworks that are basically at their core doing change to others.
Mhm.
And this is what makes them problematic, because when we talk about business change, you usually bring in the brains, or you have like some top management who brings in the brain and the muscle, and they're going to change, steer the change in the organization, which in essence is forcefully guiding, leading, making others in the
Mhm.
organization change. And we have seen, like, everything where force is applied, it can work. You can force a square peg into a round hole with sufficient force. What will you do in that process is break the
Mhm.
panel or break the peg. Something is going to give. But
Mhm.
the matter of fact is, apply sufficient force and you will be able to achieve something. But that's no way to do things with humans. So we have these methods that have worked in a way, but they worked in a way to damage people, to
Mhm.
traumatize people, to damage organizations in the process. Better way or better approach that I have seen and others have seen is where you make a change a joint activity. Instead of
Mhm.
forcing others to change, like I change you,
Mhm.
we come together and figure out, okay, what needs to change? How do we want to change this together? How do we approach it? And as I said, I think change is ultimately a very, very humane activity. Like, if
Mhm.
you look at the mankind, humankind, we have been continuously changing,
Totally.
adapting to wildest of circumstances.
Mhm.
So that is kind of my starting position on change and change management.
The thing is that the way, because I also know those models, and I've been in an organization where it became in vogue to become certified in either of those models and to be a certified whatever practitioner for change management. It always seemed to me that it just doing one thing and calling it something else. The thing you're doing is to bend people's will to your own, because those processes rarely begin from a position of let's first figure out what the change that we want is. It's usually, so there's a change that needs to be done coming top down, right, from the brains. Now how do you bend everyone to your will so that it actually gets adopted? And this is of course never said like this, but it usually starts even if they call it like get people on board and get them involved and so on, as long as there is no openness to reject or to add nuance or to slightly adapt or a lot adapt the proposed change, to somehow find not a middle ground, not a compromise, that to skirt the trade-off. So how much change, in what way, with what pace, for what purpose, as long as you're not open to adapting what you want to do. It's not about change so much, in my view. It's about basically have a crisis. And now it's about forcing people to just adapt at their own cost, at their own expense emotionally, sometimes also economical cost, to what you want them to do. And I find that that is coercive. I'm not saying that every time you have to convince someone, or I'm not saying there are no situations where, look, something needs to happen for whatever reason that hopefully is well justified. You need to go to a certain direction, so you need to change direction. And therefore you cannot always be democratic about it and bring everyone on board and discuss, because fundamentally a company is not a democracy. I know it comes as a surprise to many people, but it's not, right? It's a whole bunch of political systems in one. But certainly I have the impression that more often than not, what we call change management is basically framed as change management, but in reality is coercion, manipulation, exercising of power hierarchically, hidden veiled threats that if you do not comply, there will be downsides. They don't even need to be tight-fisted. It can be just softly alluded to. We've all been, I think, in situations where we know we're being manipulated. We know that a certain agenda is being pushed. So if an agenda is being pushed and I'm not being asked for input, what will I do? I will change. As you said, I will fit through the round hole. I'm a square peg, I'll fit through the round hole, or vice versa. And then either I leave down the road, or I revert to my previous one, or I'm never the same I used to be. And I have lost something of what made me part of the old system. So I also pretty much hate the term change management, but it's what people call it.
I mean, the term itself, to manage change, that doesn't sound bad by itself, but the models that we built around it and that became most popular are more like how to force change.
Yeah.
But it's kind of because there's a communicate step. The communicate doesn't mean listen or involve. Communicate usually means force feed information packages, etc. What I want to make clear to anyone listening is, I agree, organizations are not democracies. Like somebody owns an organization, it's within their right to do whatever they want as long as they don't break the law. So I'm not saying that everybody must be heard, everybody must be involved. What I'm saying is a better approach to let's say driving organization, assuming that people are on board, that they want this. If you want to change in such a way that you actually keep your best people, that you create a better organization in the process of change, is by actively involving everyone. So everybody needs to co-create this change. You need to change together. So that is, it's not to me the same as necessarily forcing everybody to be heard, or that you must hear everybody. Sometimes there's a difficult change and you will have to lose some people, but assuming that those that are on board, instead of telling them this is how you are changing and this is A, B, C, D, E, A, H, F, is, hey, let's figure out together, how to change, what to change, etc., etc., etc. And the challenge with such approach is that it seems slower in the beginning, but the biggest, let's say, downside, in lack of better words, is that it's scary to people in power, because it makes them feel powerless, because they are not in a position anymore that they signed off, this is what's going to happen, and I can tell my board by quarter 2025 we can expect this and this. So it makes them feel powerless, and there's nothing more dangerous than a high positioned person feeling powerless, because then they start doing stupid things that they usually didn't do in their career.
It doesn't even have to be a high power hippo, what they call it, right? In Agile, a hippo, a high something, individual, highest paid individual, something like this. But okay, the thing is, even if you're a team lead, you're assuming responsibility for being a team manager or a middle manager, and you want your team to go in a different direction, the way they behave, the way they get things done. As we said in a previous episode, why will my people not innovate, right? Why will my people not do X? This is not very helpful. And you're putting the focus on people. And in reality, work the system with the people, assuming that the people you have are those who also you want to accompany you in the next phase of this organization, team, company, department, whatever. Involve them together, work on the system after you have brought everyone on board to understand, not necessarily agree, that the system has to get some things done. There are some requirements of the system that the system has to fulfill. I don't know, contribute to revenue growth or reduce lead time of product development or anything that the company, maybe cascades, Hoshinkanri, whatever approach you choose. And then after you've agreed that this is really where the system goes, and whether people agree or not, that this is where we'll go, guys, okay, or gals, like we need to go this direction because the organization expects from us to contribute to its strategy, to its strategy deployment. Then you say, well, okay, this is the target, this is the direction. How do we want to contribute to this? And then it changes the discussion. So not anymore, I come in and I will tell you, we're going to do this, this, and that. It's like, okay, generally, hopefully have flexibility as a manager. We need to move this direction. How could we, in which ways could we help move in this direction? Then people are part of the discussion without this turning into a fluffy, vote. And what do most people think we should do? No, it's a workshop or a series of workshops. So work on the system with the people inside. And then, of course, then everybody who's listening in will say, oh, that's Toyota, that's lean. Yeah, whatever you call it agile, call it bagile, call it deft. I don't care, right? But human beings are they have a need for, we have a need for, I'm not an alien, right? We have a need for communication, for understanding, for reasoning, and very often for rationalization. Most of us rationalize, but you have to give them something, even if it's just, if they don't want to engage, fine, okay, but it was fair and square. They can then choose whether they will come with or they will bring up their points. So work on the system, not on the people. So that's coming back full circle to the beginning of this discussion. Change management is too much work on the people, as you said, Bruno. And it is, in my experience, never work on the system. And that is the tragedy of it. So those frameworks are just, I think they're just certification. Okay, I dare say that they're usually certification grifts. You learn some important things, but you learn how to cram change down people's throats and just do or die. I would not want to experience that, and I have never perpetrated this on others.
It turned into an industry. When it turns into an industry, it ceases to be useful.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes with belts and degrees and titles and certified whatever master. It's like, okay, come on. Usually, if you look at those roles, they tend to be rather secretarial. So they have a process, which is by the book, and then they have deliverables, and they have to do this. Like say, communicate. When you say, oh yeah, we did a PR, we wrote an article, we wrote in the company newsletter why this is a new wind of change and innovation, blah, blah, transformation for a company, blah, big words, BS, BS, BS. People just, they listen to those words and they don't understand because there's no meaning behind them. They say, well, I informed them, like, this is what the model said, inform or communicate. I did. What more do they want? And this totally misses the point. I know I'm sounding very cynical, but seriously, how can you not be cynical about this stuff? You have to be blind to not see that the way it's being done on others, it's basically it's forcing, driving or whatever. It's can work only in crisis, and in non-crisis, which is usually the case, it will only work until people find a way to cheat the system, say, yeah, back to the old status, if they can. Totally unsustainable.
We're out of time. I completely agree. If I would sum up this in one sentence, if you want to change, make sure you work with the people instead.
On the system. work the system. Yeah. Okay. So this has been another episode of The Puzzle. Thank you for watching. Send us your comments. We already have started receiving very interesting comments and questions on direct messages on LinkedIn. We're happy to always answer difficult questions, even if they can become a bit controversial. Have a good evening. Have a good whatever. See you on the next one. Goodbye.